Hello, welcome. Are you that one person looking for how you can get a full knowledge on detailing? You know how you can detail your foundation design, you can detail foundation drawing, your column, your beam layout, and the beam detail, how you can detail your slab, how you can detail your staircase, your lift, your foundation, and various type of editing. Here, you're welcome to STADAS, where we train future engineers on how to detail and how to design structural model of all kinds. In today's video, we'll be looking at how we can detail a simple structural plan, trying to detail the reinforcement of a simple structural plan in this model. My name is Adasi Unel and I'm your instructor. By the way, let's begin. In doing this, all you need is a structural plan. Now, this is a structural plan that was sent out from the structural software. It could be any software you're using. It could be Ryan, it could be Protastructure, it could any kind of software. It could be protastructure, any kind of software you're using, you're still good with it. But all we need is just the structural software or the drawing for you to start, you know, your detailing. So what we're going to do, we're going to be using more of layout here. So we'll click on this layer here and we'll look at our want to use our rebar. So I've already created a layer for the top rebar and the bottom rebar. So here I'll go with the bottom rebar. Note all this should always be by what? By layer. But because I'm using this black background, I'm going to turn this layer to blue, right? So that to be transparent while we'll be drawing. So this is what I'm going to do. First of all, we're going to focus more on the bottom bar because you know what? While drawing, considering this slab, I want to detail a solid slab. Solid slab is such that we are going to consider more of our bottom reinforcement. We are not going to detail top and bottom reinforcement for this our reinforcement, like what you've seen over here. You see, we have more of the bottom reinforcement, but I'm going to go more detailed than this. All right. So in doing this, we're going to get the bottom reinforcement as well as get the top reinforcement. So let's go. First of all, you click on the pick your line, and it's going to start at the midpoint, the mid of this guy. How do you get the midpoint? You can see this by clicking on this. I'm going to trace, then going to trace down. So in doing this, what you're going to do is going to pick a line. So you're going to pick a line, get from the middle of this, because our reinforcement is going to start from this edge. We're going to throw the reinforcement down to all this. So what you're going to do, first of all, what you're going to understand basically in this before we start anything. So understanding what we're going to do in this layer, before we start anything, what we're going to do here is understanding the principle. Now, when you're detailing, all right, irrespective of we understanding that in our side we have our we have the length of our rebar to be 12 meters, irrespective of the size of the bar is 12 meters, so that for easy conveying from vehicle. So we have 12 meters, and your plan here, if you have from here down to this spot, you can see we are having 1.4.9 and see, but irregardless of that, we are not going to consider that. But on sides, you have to consider that if it is a straight bar, we have to consider that. But in doing this, in your detailing, when you're looking at your slab detailing, what you're going to do is you consider them by panel. Like we want to have a panel 1, or panel 2, or panel 3, panel 4, panel 5, and panel 6. All right. Then we'll have here panel 7 and panel 8. So in this regard, we're going to be taking them panel by panel. So what we're going to do, let's focus on the horizontal direction. So we'll get our line from the beam, because it's a beam. We'll get our line. What we're going to do here is we're going to extend, always try to extend it from here. You're going to have 30 from this extension here, right? So you click and you get 30. I'm using millimeter here, so I'll be going with 30 millimeter. So it's going to extend down 30 millimeter. So you can see these two lines is not together. You can come right away and join them. You can come right away and join them. Consider they are all together. So this is what we're going to be doing. So in this other length, what we're going to do, we still get another line, sorry, we still get a line from this middle. I'm going to extend it to 30, and that's what we'll do. We're going to join it. So keep doing the same thing. 30, you extend, come over here, you get your line, get your line, show it down here, extend it down to the beam over here, you get your 30, and you join. You can see. Now in this regard, if you look at what we have here, we have this span to be the same from this span here to from here, from this span down here, we're having the same, we're having the same thing as 3747 millimeter here, and the same thing down here, but it's different over here because we'll be having our reinforcement running over here, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to maintain the same, we're going to say the same span, the same reinforcement running over here should run down to this area, right? So we're going to consider this cantilever. This is a cantilever over here, so we're going to consider the cantilever. We're going to create our reinforcement, run our reinforcement down to this span. You can see this is our bottom reinforcement. Don't forget, we're doing our bottom reinforcement. So in the bottom reinforcement too, we're going to create the bottom reinforcement over here, and we're going to lap our bottom reinforcement here, and we're going to extend it 30 away from the beam, right? From the beam. You don't want to support your reinforcement at this beam joint. You're going to exceed by 30 millimeter. And in doing that, you join so that they will have the same line, right? So this is extending from the cantilever out. You understand? Okay, so at this point you can see that we are barely done with the horizontal aspect of it, because this one will be running this span, and this other reinforcement, bottom reinforcement, will be running this span. This will be running this direction because we have similar direction over here. So we'll be running from here down to this spot, so it will be running here up to this area, right? And this will take the same area of this portion. So this reinforcement, I want it to span across these two panel, this panel and this panel. While this will go this panel and halfway to this panel, while this other reinforcement will continue within this area, within this panel across this, and this reinforcement will cross this, while this will be running within these two panel, and this reinforcement will be running this panel 2, and this will always remain in panel 1, and this other reinforcement will be running across this panel because we have the same dimension, right, from this point down to where we have this beam. All right, so when you're designing on site, you always run your reinforcement down to where you can have the beam, and you cross over and you continue your details. So that's why we're going to place them panel by panel. So right away, we're going to add the returning reinforcement. So in doing the returning reinforcement, we're going to get a line. You see, we're going to get a line. Let's get a line here, put a line. So what we're going to return, what we are going to have here, what we need to consider here is our slab is 150 thickness. We are considering a thickness of 150 reinforcement slab. So when you're considering a slab of 150 reinforcement slab, you're going to consider your concrete cover. The concrete cover can be taken to be, your concrete cover can be taken to be 25 by 25 cm. So if you take 25 by 25, what you're going to get is 50. So what we're going to have as our reinforcement here will be 100. So we're going to offset 100 because 100 will be our nominal reinforcement, height. All right. So we're going to take 100 here. So we'll type 100. I will take it down here. So what we're going to do now, this is going to return down to this panel because this is our top bar. All right, this is our top bar, of which we are going to introduce a top bench here, if you like, on site. All right, so in we doing this, we need to understand what will be the length of this our reinforcement. We don't just want to add the length of this our reinforcement. Like I always tell people in engineering, there's always every formula to everything. You don't just want to drop it anyhow. So another person can choose to do this, another person can choose to do this, as the case may be. You don't do so. So what you're going to do is to what you're going to do is to check from our code. We have a nominal length for our top reinforcement, which is 25% of this span. All right. So you're going with your 25% of this span, or 30% of this span, within 25 down to 30. So any which you want to use is still better for you. All right. So if you are taking 25, like today, I'll be using 25% to get this. So 25%, if I get 25% of this using my calculator, if I get 25% of this, let's say we have 3 meter, like what we have in our dimension. So 3 meter, if we take it down to our 25%, 25% of this, 25% of 25% is presenting as 0.25. We all know that. So if we multiply this is what it's going to give us. It's going to give us 750. Simply because I want to cut the same dimension, and this is a smaller this is a smaller slab panel. I'm going to use 800, and I'm going to use it all across other span, irrespective of using this. All right. So I'm going to use 800 here. So I'll be using 800 to run all axes. So what do? I'm going to get a line and take it down. So I'm going to take the 800 from here, not originally from this span, right? So it's going to start from here. So what do? I'm going to cut 800 millimeter, that is 80 cm. So this is what I'm going to have, right? And as well join. Right, the 800 is going to take effect from the beam. Mind you, I see a lot of people starting it from this point. Let's not do that. Always start it from the beam. All right, you're going to calculate it from the formwork, because the formwork is going to give you the exact length of this. So from the formwork, you're going to measure from the formwork. This is, maybe let's say this could be the formwork, whereas we're going to have the beam reinforcement here, and the beam reinforcement is going to have the concrete cover. All right, so we're going to take from the formwork 800 this way. If you're dealing with cm, you can take 80 cm. Just need to be familiar with your conversion. So that's what we're going to do. All right, so we're going to take this off. I'm going to continue with our detail. So what we're going to do right now, we're not going to have we're not going to have a straight 90-degree. We're going to have a little bend as a result of the bending. So what we're going to do, we're going to chamfer it. So we're going to chamfer it to get our bending as it ought to be on site. That is the proper way for you to detail. You have to make it look real. All right. So in doing this, we're going to get radius. I'm going to take a radius of 20. You can see that should be the bend, and we'll do the same thing here. That should be the anchor. So we're going to transfer this same bar of already bend. We're going to copy it and paste on all other areas. All right, all other areas due for this. So what I did was just to mirror it down. So we have the same thing over here. What I did is just to mirror it over this other side. So we're going to make sure we're going to put it all across. So in doing this, don't forget, this is your cantilever. In cantilever, we're going to extend it down to this other area. In doing your cantilever, you always want to return the reinforcement down, right? You're going to reinforce you're going to take you're going to take all your rebar down to this area, and you're going to extend your 80, right? Your 800 is going to start from this rebar. You're not going to leave it where we have the 80 initially. All right, so from here we're going to extend 80. All right, so it's going to extend from the cantilever. It's going to extend out down to the beam, and you continue your 80 because we have a cantilever here. So we always detail this area. I want this area to be doubly reinforced because it's a cantilever area. We're going to do the same thing over here when we are extending it in a vertical direction. So in this regard, we will continue by having the vertical direction. What I did here was to make sure what we have on this other side, I did what I mirrored it out. So we can take this, we can move this down to this, and we can also rotate it so that we can use it to get our, sorry, we can rotate it. I'm also clicking on the same thing, rotate. Okay, I'm rotating it this other side. So what we're going to do right now is to get our top reinforcement. So getting the top reinforcement, we will click on a line, we'll get a line, start our line from this. As usual, we click and we go on 30, and that we join. So you have the same thing over here. You have your 30. Come over here. You have your 30. All right. You join. So this will cut across this whole span. The same thing over here. Get a line. Get our 30. Keep on repeating the same process, you know. Get inside here, and from here where we have our cantilever, we're going to span it across here. We're going to cut it across and down to where we have our 30. Extend by 30. Extend by 30, and here we also extend by 30 also, so that both can also chain by 30. 300 millimeter, right? So these are 300 millimeter, all cut across 300 millimeter. So in doing this, this has already taken care of the lap length. Mind you, we are going to use this on this simple detailing. We are going to use Y12 in detailing this. We'll be showing you that we'll be calling when we'll be calling out this reinforcement. We are using Y12, and you know the lapping length for Y12 is what is for the compression zone. We always have the 50D, and the tension we have 40D, but in this we're going to be using 50D across all reinforcement, you know. But having this, since we're using 50D, if you use 50 times our diameter, what we're going to have here is what is 60. But you have a 60, what we're going to have after the lap, the reinforcement, because of the moment acting along this area, because of the hopping moment, I always advise us to cut across the span when you have little span. All right, but when you have a continuous slab, a open continuous slab that is very very large, all right, so in that regard you can consider doing such lapping. But when you have a beam situated like this and there's a need for you to detail it panel by panel, always try to cut the reinforcement across and cut the reinforcement over across. That is very very good when you're doing that on site. So that is why I have to implement it here on my structural, you know, detailing of the slab. So in this regard, we are gone far in our detail. So what we're going to do is to try to put the anchor like what we have in this area. You can see we've done this panel, and this we've done this panel, this panel, this panel, remaining days, and we'll also do for this. We have to get a line, and we'll do the same here. We'll have the same here. So what do? We'll click on this line and we'll get our 300 millimeter, right? Get our 300 millimeter. So this is not going to start from here. You're going to start inside the beam. So we're going to put it inside the beam, right inside the beam, like what we have over here. So in doing this, we're going to create a return for all these bars. So in mirroring that, we just have to mirror our reinforcement. We pick our reinforcement, copy it out, pick it here, you click over here. So what we are going to do here is just clicking all over where we have our termination, because we don't have slab this area. So the slab is starting from this beam and running towards this beam, as we said earlier, panel by panel. So we don't have anything along this area. So this is the terminating point, all right? So the same thing we're going to do over here. Go to copy. I'm going to paste here. Go to paste over here. You can see. So the same thing we're going to do. This is our slab. So we're going to start this guy here. From here, I'm going to extend 80, right? That's 800 millimeter. So it's going to start from here. I'll return down to the beam and extend. That's when we're now begin to count our top bar. You don't count the top bar here because we are at this area. We're considering this to be a cantilever. So we are stressing all of the load around this area down to this panel, because it's cantilever. So we are stressing everything, we are returning everything down to this beam, stressing it down to this beam. So in that, all moment has to return down to this beam. So that's why we are cutting it across. And the same thing where we have the cantilever, we want to stress it down, all right? So be having a support from inside, all right? So in that regard, what we're going to do right now is to start running our panel, to start running our label. All right, so in doing that, we're going to go back to the layer. We're going to go back to the layer. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to call the slab call, slab in call. So I'm going to go back to the layer. I want this to be in this layer. So I'm going to pick the line. So I'm going to indicate that this panel is going to run across this area down to this. It's going to run from this beam down to this beam, right? We have beam A, beam B, and beam C. All right, so we're going to cut this from this area down to this unit and to this one. So we're going to call it out. So you can see this beam, this reinforcement, this is trying to say that this reinforcement is running from this span down to this span. All right. So we're going to indicate this with white. See, this is the color line, okay? And we're going to include a text to it. But let's just call, and what we're going to do here, so involve a circle. Let's get a circle, the curtain above. Just increase the thickness over here. After increase the thickness over here. So you can see, this is to indicate that this panel is running over here to there. So let's pick a line. Let's cut a line this. Let's move the line and centralize it. So with success in centralizing this, what we're going to do is to call our peak lead angle. So here we've quick call in our quick lead line. I don't want this to show in this color. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to explode this. So if I explode this, if I click on it and I explode, you can see it's going to turn back to the color. So with this, I'm now free to copy, but this is not going to show. So let me change this to another color. I think this will be very transparent, right? So I can get this, can use this in every area that I want, So let me delete the line since I've already exploded it. So I'll delete the line. So I'm going to use only this. So I'm going to mirror this. I'm going to mirror this. I'm going to move this down to this edge. You can see, this will tell you that this reinforcement is running across this span. All right, this is simple of it. So we're going to do the same thing across, the same thing we did here. That's what we're going to be doing, calling out the label. So let's continue. So we're going to create a line. I want this to run along this area. So I'm going to cut this. I still want this to run across the span. Please, if you like what you're seeing, I want you to subscribe, share, and comment on it. This will help the video this will help us to grow as a channel. So you can see here, I'm going to copy this. All right. So if you pay attention, there's something we forget to do here. There's a bar that's supposed to be running along this bar, which is supposed to be a bottom bar. So we're going to pick our line. I'm going to take a bar here. I'm going to run this bar down here into this beam. Now, if you notice, if I take if I take the top reinforcement over here, this is what will happen. If I take the top reinforcement over here, I have 100 and 80, 800. You can see what we have. We'll come over here, we'll have 100, and we'll get 80. You can see that they are hopefully clashing. You can decide to leave it or you can decide to close it, but I'll prefer that you join them and they will be top and bottom along this area too, because the distance is very short, right? The distance is very, very short. It's not like this that will return and will return and will still have space, okay? But in this direction, since we have the distance, what you have here is very slim, all right? What we have here is very slim. You can see just 120. We can decide to join it. And try to join it, make it one, making it one, and we'll have our line running across this area. So what do we do here? We're going to copy this because it's a bottom reinforcement, so we're going to match property. We're going to match property to it. Go to match property, and we're going to chamfer, create a return. What we are trying to do here is trying to create a return to it. All right. So this is detail top and bottom. So this we're going to have a top and bottom in this direction, and it's going to span along this line. So we're going to copy this. Okay, we're going to copy this. So what we're going to do here, let's match the similar properties so that we understand the ones that are actual, the span line and the label line. You can see the one in this color is actually the span line, telling us that each of the reinforcement is running in one direction to the other direction, and this is a call out label, right? This is a call out label to this. So we successfully done this. So let's copy the direction arrow. This is quite a process. You have to enjoy every process you're going through. This is how you detail it manually. All right. Otherwise, you can recommend you use CAD RC for your detail, but I enjoy doing this. So in this direction, I will also call this out. Okay, this arrow now linking it towards the label. So what we're going to do right here is to copy. Let's try and copy. Let's paste it close to the span. So we're pasting it close to each of the span that they are running. Okay, very fast and easy. You understand the process, you're going to be very fast and easy for you. But you're going to take it slow. You're going to keep practicing, putting more effort, and there you go. You get the accuracy and you get the speed. So we're done with that. We'll also copy this. So copy the bulb too. Denoting, sorry, that was a move. We'll create this. Right? Okay. You're done in this direction. You can see this label telling this span is running from here. So this is where we're going to add text. We're going to add text much later, all right? But you can see telling the top and bottom running from this span down to this, all right? The same thing here running down to this. So you are not taking this across this, because this reinforcement is running from this beam down to this beam, and also from this other beam down here. So that's what we're going to do. So finally, this is how you detail. This is how you run your bottom reinforcement when you're detailing a solid slab, you are considering a solid slab. These are all the bottom and the return for the top reinforcement. So what we're going to do, we're going to start detailing the top reinforcement also. All right, because when you're detailing, you should have something in mind. Now we have, when you're detailing, you have something in mind. We have the main reinforcement and the bottom reinforcement, like also considered as the primary and the secondary reinforcement. So looking at that, we have the main and the distribution. So in the main reinforcement is the one running along the the shorter span. Like we have the shorter span here, right? Shorter span. So this becomes the main reinforcement because this is the shorter span, and the one at the longer reinforcement. This becomes what? This becomes what? This becomes the distribution. All right, become the distribution. So in this other span, if you look at this is running across the shorter span because from this span down to this span is shorter, right? From this span down to this span, we have about 3,000 millimeter, right? And we have 4.2 millimeter, right? So if you look at this span is shorter, and this span over here is longer. So this reinforcement running along the longer span, this is the distribution. Why the one running along the shorter is the main reinforcement. All right, the one running along the shorter is the main reinforcement. All right. So if you got that, we're going to still apply that in the top rebar. So in this area, for it to ease the whole beam moment running along this beam, so for it to stop those moment running along this beam, it is good that we add our top bars, right? It's good for we to add our top bar along the side. Like you have your return, you have this top bar along this area. So we're going to create a top bar along the middle span because the beam moment acting along all the supports is going to act at this support, it's going to act at all the supports. All right. So we have the sag moment along the middle support. So when you have the sag moment at the middle support, what do? You provide a reinforcement at the middle support. But when you have a hopping moment, a uplift moment along the beam area, along where you're having your joint, right? So you provide a top reinforcement. That's why a top reinforcement is needed at the joint, at the end of the beam, and at where you have your beams region, right? Then the bottom reinforcement in this type of slab is mostly needed at where you have what at where you have the space, to ease the deflection, because the deflection will be acting when the load is acting upon this slab. What we're acting at the bottom region will be having more of compression. All right. So here, right here, what we're going to do is we're going to create another layer for our top reinforcement, and we're still going to go to what? Still going to get blue. Let's still get a blue to it, and let's get a dash line. Okay, let's get a dash line to it. Let's create a dash line. So in this regard, we're still going to create a dash line to it. So what do? We're still going to create our 80 and 80 along this region since we have a smaller reinforcement. Otherwise, you still consider the 30, the steel theory. You're still going to consider the 30% or the 25% along the span. All right. So in this design, what I'm going to consider here is I'm going to consider using the 80 across all the beam. So I'm going to apply 80 here. See where the 80 stops, and we'll cut across this beam, and we're going to go with 80. You can see what we have over here. So I'm going to be copying this down to this area, and the same thing over here. And you can see over here we have already the top reinforcement over here. So this beam does not need a top reinforcement. We don't need to add additional one. So we have another top reinforcement here along this area. So I have the top reinforcement here at the cantilever. All right. So we're going to be needing another one along this span because we are done with the horizontal span. So the horizontal direction. So we're going to go with this, the vertical direction. We're going to add the top bar there. So we're going to cut this. We're going to go with 80. I'm going to take this over here. I'm going to cut A3 across 800. Sorry, let's get rid of this. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to take 800 millimeter. I'm going to copy this to this other span. Mind you, this what I do here is because I'm having a simple slab detail like this. I'm going to have a simple slab panel. Whereas when you're doing a kind of a luxurious building or a larger building having kind of a larger square area, please consider using your 25%. What you're going to do is you measure the span. You're going to measure the span down here. We have 4,675. You're going to take 25% of these to detail your reinforcement. How do you do that? You go to your calculator and you're going to get this. You're going to get 4,675. You multiply it by the percentage, 25%. What you get, this is 1 meter. This is almost 1.2 meter. We have 1168, right? 0.7. So you're going to be using this at this area, right? So if you want to use that approach, what you're going to be doing here, if you want to be using the approach, what you're going to do here is to type 1168. Let's make it a whole number, 1168. All right, and this span will also be short. You create this, and what do we have here? We have 20. We have 2075, right? So we're going to take 25% of that span. 25% of the span. Sorry. 25% of the span will give us 5, right? 518. So we're going to take this. So you're going to detail 518. So you can see. We're going to take rid of this. So in a scenario where you're looking at a large area of the building, you can consider using this. All right, you can consider using this, consider the longer span. But in this design, because I know that this area will be duly sufficient if I use this in design based on practice, I just be using these to design so that for learning purpose. But we'll be doing some other longer and other vital or slab detailing where we'll be considering this. For this purpose of this simple tutorial, let's just keep to the basic. All right, just keep to the basic and keep it simple. But this is absolutely okay for you to go on the detail. All right, so let's go on this. So in running this, let's take rid of our calculator and we'll go back to our runners. So we'll start by getting a line, struck the line there and here. Sorry, let's go back to layers by layer. I'll pick a line again. Mind you, we are running for this top bar, right? We're running for this top bar. So let's make it fast as we go. If you like what you see, I want you to subscribe, comment, share this video to your friends. There are other people that want to see something like this, that will need of something like this, a structure like this. So I want you to share and subscribe to this. All right? Let's pick a line. We're going to move it down here. Did a mistake by putting it here, so we'll be shifting it down to the beam. All right? Okay. I think this is too close, so I'll be moving this a little bit away. Okay? I'll be moving this a little bit away from it. So we'll get this along this area and we'll be adding another line. We'll be creating another line along this top area. Okay? So we'll be matching the properties. Matching our properties. So you can see, after matching the properties, we're going to copy this and we're going to add on the areas where they are all needed. Sorry, here, not here. because this is a bottom reinforcement. So this is a top reinforcement. So it's running across this span, right? It's running across both span, and this is running only on this span, only on the panel, right? From this span down to this span, and we'll have another one here. So we're going to copy this. So we're going to send it over here too. From this down to this panel. Whereas this top bar here is running from this beam over here, over this beam, right? It's running from this beam over this beam, okay? While this top bar is running from this beam down to this span. It's running from this panel down to this panel, all right? So we're going to still add this. Okay. So what we have here is the same thing. So we have here. So copy this. Just copy this. Take it over here. Okay. Copy the same thing here. What we have here. Same thing as what we have here. Okay. But this is running in both directions. It's running in this panel and also in this panel. So it's running across both panels, right? So it's spanning across. So the same thing to this. So why talking? Let's start taking the vertical direction. So in the vertical direction, this will be running from this direction up here. You can see, sorry, by layer. Okay, so then it's running across this span, correct? Then we'll be looking at, also this. We'll be also looking at this. Also looking at this bottom reinforcement, okay, running from this area down here. So we're still looking at this over here, and we're still looking at this beam, this panel running from here, this panel running from here down here, right? Running from this beam over this beam. That's where this reinforcement, this bottom reinforcement, right, is running. So in this direction, we're going to fix on this. So let's create a line and also get for this direction. So on this direction, what we're still going to do, looking at this span, okay, we've identified the span. So let's start tracing so that we won't get confused, right? So that is it for this and for this panel and also for this panel. Okay, so let's copy the property, let's match property for all the directions. So you can see that we want this reinforcement to run in this direction, right? From this direction and end at this direction where we have this panel, where we have a terminating panel. All right. So bear in mind where I keep this void, I keep this void separate because I'm not considering my staircase here, because from the architectural drawing I'm having the staircase here, I'm having the staircase over here. All right. All right. So this is the architectural drawing. So on the architectural drawing, this is what we're trying to detail. This is architectural drawing. So in the architectural drawing, we are having a staircase here. So you can see where we have the cantilever here, where we have the staircase. So we have a straight flight staircase behind here. That's the more reason why we didn't consider the staircase in the building. We're having an spiral staircase here. So it has nothing to do with the building. So we have to keep the void outside. So we'll continue with the structural. So we try to keep it simple by avoiding the spiral columns and the staircase over here. So just considering the landing, all right? We're designing for the landing of the staircase, all right? So we're going to design everything before, right? So let's continue with the design. So this guy here, The reinforcement over here is also going. You're also spanning the reinforcement here by layer. So let's keep it simple by layer. Okay, so this guy is also going up, whereas we are having this spanning all across beam. Okay, so let me try by copying matching properties. So you can see our detail here and the reinforcement. You can see the reinforcement bar. See, this one is running over this other span down to where we have our termination from this, right? Where we're having a termination from this. So this span is going to span from this reinforcement is going to span from this down to this region where we have our landing from the staircase down over here. And since we are having the same span, like I explained earlier, this reinforcement is going to run from this beam over this spot, okay, while this other reinforcement is going to run from where we have this beam, okay, where we have this beam down to this beam. Then we have another beam at the cantilever. Okay, let's just take it because we're taking it step by step so that we don't get confused, right? So we're going to add all the bubbles so that we can identify them one after the other. So this is for this, right? And this is running over this direction, and this is for this direction. So let's try to put up our bubbles. So I will take this and I'll copy it and I will try to rotate it. Let me try to copy. Let me try to rotate so that I can carry it. Okay, and copy this and take it for the upper areas, right? Copy, take this. So I have to do this so that it be simple. So you can see, so we're just going to pass through the same procedure, posting them on all where we have our continuation, all right? So we're just going to do that. So we'll do the same thing on this other region, okay? We've already added this other layer, so we're going to add it at this other part. So we're going to copy, I'm going to drop them. So you're going to drop first on this area, and you copy again so that you have be fast. You can see you just drop, sorry, that is scale I took, copy. You try to copy your reinforcement, copy the arrow rather, and you add them, showing their span direction. Feel free to add on the comment section what you don't understand so that we can work on it, we can explore more on other videos so we can make it transparent for every one of us. All right, feel free to share your ideas. All right, so you can see here too, and here is going to span directly from the startup point. Okay, it's going to start from, you can see it's going to start from here down over here. Okay, it's going to span over here down over here. Okay, so you can see we are done with this reinforcement. Okay, so in doing this, always add your label in any area where you notice that we are going to have a slight a span across two direction, like a particular reinforcement is spanning across two panels. Always try to add a continuation arrow showing that it's spanning across this and across this. The same thing on this direction, from this down to this portion and down, showing that this reinforcement is going to, this is how we're going to read it. We're going to read this reinforcement crossing both panel, right? and also this crossing across, cutting across both panel either. All right. So the one having end-to-end arrow, identify that you are having just in a single direction, a single panel. So when you are having one reinforcement cutting across both panel, you have to have an arrow showing that there's a continuity in that reinforcement. All right. So in this, we have successfully detailed our top reinforcement and our bottom reinforcement. Let's scale the top reinforcement up so that it's going to be different from the bottom reinforcement. All right. Let's add this a dash. Since a dash line, let's scale the dash line out. Okay. So in scaling this, I want to scale this so that we have a difference between the top bar and the bottom reinforcement. So what we're going to do is to click on the top bar. So what we're going to do is we'll type line type scale. So we're going to take this, depending on the scale reference, depending on your scale you're using for your drawing. So this, I'm going to go with a 0.1, right? When doing 0.1, you can see that I have a different, thickness because I'm using a dash line for it. I'm using a dash line for the top bar, all right? And on the bottom bar, I'm having a continuation line. So you can see the difference on where you have the top bar. So I can also copy these properties and match it down to where we have all the top bars. This is also the top bar, though it's returning. It's also returning at the top, right? So let's keep it simple. All right. So now we've arrived at the end of this. So finally, what we're going to do now before we go into text, I want us to go into text and do this. But what you're going to do right now is to introduce a top runner. Like what I said we have a main distribution and we have the main bar and we have the distribution bar, right? We have the main bar and we have the distribution bar. The main bar are the bars running at the shorter span, and the distribution bar are the ones running at the longer span, right? One has to be on top and one has to be above, right? So you can have your complete mat. So along the top mat, when you have your top mat, right? When you have your top mat here, now, if you have your top mat here, this on the bottom, let's say on the bottom, for example, we have the span. So this will be on the bottom direction, which means this will have to be laid first before you have this. Okay? So the same thing has happened on the top bar. So this has to be returned before you have a top reinforcement running along the span. Okay? So we're going to have a top reinforcement running along the span. So you're not going to leave this like this. Alright? So we're going to create the top reinforcement along that area. So let's create the top reinforcement. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a line. I'm going to create our lapping. We're going to lap towards this area. So provide our lapping down here. See, along this area, I'm going to have another reinforcement running down to where we have our lapping here. Okay. So in the same regard, so we're going to match property. All right, we're going to match property. So definitely along this area we have our top reinforcement here and also along this area. All right. So we need a top reinforcement that will run across this. All right, because this has to be a mat on top. All right. So we need a mat that's going to run across this. So we'll get a line along this because we have 20 over here, and see, so this will be the top mat cutting across this section. All right. So the same thing will happen along this area. We have our top reinforcement here and we have our top reinforcement here. We also need a top bar cutting across this because we have a top bar running along this area. Okay, so we're going to get a line. Okay, so that will be it running across. It's not going to spot because we're going to have a lap length over there. Don't forget your 60, since we're using 12, right? So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to match property. Go to match property. Okay, because this now is going to be matching the top reinforcement. Right, these two be marrying together along this area. Okay, while these two, while this and this be marrying together along the bottom reinforcement, because this is going to span across from this area down to where we have the span. Okay, so let's not get confused why we have this. So we're going to introduce, we're going to still put our span line spanning across all this. So we're going to get a line that's going to run from here down to this spot, and hopefully this will be running from here because of the termination point we have here and here. It's going to running across down here, and where we have our top bar terminating at this unit, we're going to transfer this down to this area. All right, here we have this top bar. So the same thing, where the top bar is going to stop here, so we're going to get, and the same thing and over here. So we're going to take this. So for easy, let's take this off, because the same span line over here is going to run through. Or we can also leave this. Okay, we can also leave this, telling this to span across only on this direction. Also leave this, telling this to span across only on this direction. Okay, so it's going to be spanning across this direction, only from this direction over this, where we have the top reinforcement. So this will be cutting across. So we'll be having this at the top mat. This will be mat at the top, while this will be at the bottom, and this will be at the bottom. So this will be our bottom mat, and while this will be our top mat. All right. So we're going to provide this because this needs to be done on site. Okay. So in that regard, we're going to have this too along this area. This two will be the top mat. Okay, and it's going to cut across this top and also this other top. That's why you see we added the spanning line across this. So in doing this, we're going to take our line, we're going to indicate this, cutting it alongside here, running to this spot. Okay, down to where we have this. Also, we have the beginning of this. Also, where we have this. All right, the same thing, and so we go. I'm going to detail this from this, right? So let's match property. Okay, so this will be running from this area down to this area. So you can see it was going to run over here, run over where you have the top mat over here, and where you have the top mat, and it's going to go out, and this is going to span across this, right? So we're going to have the mat. This is going to have, we're going to have this mat of the same span. It's going to mat over the top and over this top reinforcement and over this top, and where we have this differently. All right, so the same thing over here too. So this is going to mat across this, and it's going to mat across this beam, because we're having this top reinforcement spanning across. So we're having the same thing over here. It's going to mat across here, and it's going to mat across this, and hope we go. It's not going to mat this because this is a different dimension. So we're going to take this off. I'm going to join the line. Okay, so finally we're going to copy, identify, span space. Same thing here. and what we have here. Okay, that's what we have there. So let's also copy the arrow and show where they should be properly indicated. Okay, let's show where they should be properly indicated. Okay, okay, okay. So this is the same thing. We'll keep cutting across till we'll get to the final point. Okay, so now we have actualized our dream by detailing and reinforcing this simple one-story building slab, right? Right? Having known that our staircase is outside and our top bar are properly, aligned, all right? So what we're going to do now is to add the text. So we're going to create a text for this where we're going to be calling out all our spanning. So it's time for you to detail this by saying from this span to this span, how many reinforcement, how many numbers of this reinforcement should be spanned from this beam down to this beam. So in doing that, what we're going to do is by calculating this, we have span like we all did. This 3 meter, so we're going to do divided. The formula goes by you dividing this 3 meter by the spacing, and the spacing now I will be going with the reinforcement will be 12 mm reinforcement, and my spacing will be 20 cm. You can go with 200 mm, so we'll go with 200 mm. So what we're going to do is to get the text. All right, we'll get the text, we'll copy this text. I'll try to move it down over here. All right, I'm going to move it. I'm going to set all this so that we'll have a straight, edge over it. So I'm going to have a straight edge here and over here. All right, let me shift this down. So I'm going to have a straight edge. So I'm going to trim all this. So I'm going to trim this one little one here. So I'm going to trim this and the whole of this. Okay, so you can see that I'm going to take this off. I'm going to take this off. So what do I do? So I'm going to take this. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add it to all. But before I do that, if you look at this, this is our bottom bar. So I'm going to add this. I want to add something to what we have here. Because we're going to detail the direction of the bar. I will always like people to, as a professional, when when you detail your rebars, you should always add the direction of the bar, right? Because this is specifying that we have one number of the white wave reinforcement at bar one with a spacing of 200 mm at bottom. So this is telling you that this is bottom, but at that we're going to detail the direction. But what I want us to do is, first of all, let's focus on the numbers. All right, focus on the numbers. Then later we will now come with the bar number, and let the end of it will now come with what? The direction. All right, so what we're going to do right now is to get this. So if I have my on my calculator, if I have this to divide my spacing, I'm using this to divide by the spacing, right? Click on this, I'm having 15, and the formula will go by you dividing this divide by this. So when you're dividing the span, when you're dividing the span by the spacing, the figure you have is 15. So we're going to do it by +1, right? For factor of safety. The factor of safety is that one you're adding. So we're going to add 1 to it to make it what? 16. So this is to say that from here down to this portion, we're going to have 15. We're going to have what? 16 numbers. So before we do that, please let's copy and paste all this. So we're going to copy this and we're going to paste on all of them. All right. At this point, we're just pasting all this text so that we can use it to edit what we have in our properties. So here we go, successfully added all the text on the vertical direction and the horizontal direction. This is what you need to know while you're detailing. For you to simply identify this, you need to all the horizontal direction, you have to detail it on this other side, and all the vertical, try to place them other side, unless otherwise when you have a limited space, all the rebars are clustering, then you have to create it on this other layer. But always try to put all this detail, the one on running across this span, like this one, you want to run it. For example, you have this reinforcement, you can see this reinforcement is running from this span down here. So channel the label to this direction. Do not channel the label. I see some people will call out a label like this, and they'll create an arrow here. Okay, some people will do this. It's not bad, but always try to avoid that unless when you have the clumsy detail. All right, so let's try to keep it simple. So in doing this, like what we've already done, from here to here we have 3,000, right? We have 3,000 divided by 200, we have 15. So 15 plus 1, we have 16 for this span. Okay, so this will be what? This will be what? 15. Okay, this will be 16 plus 1 will be 16. Running this, cross this bar, and we'll go to the next one. So if we do this, if we take the dimension of this, so we're going to do the same method. 4797 divided by 200 is equals to, sorry, I did the wrong figure there. 4797 divided by 200, we have 43. So rounding this is 24 plus 1, we have 25. Okay, because you have a high number here, you can see. So you have 24 plus 1. When you have a high number like this, always round it up before you add the 1. Okay, for the factor of safety. But if you have a lower number, maybe say for example you have 23.2, you can leave it to be 24, but you have 23.9, is already 24. Okay, so we're going to make this 25. This will be 25 running at this bar. Okay, like I said, let's try to keep it simple and let's keep doing the same numbering. So we'll do the next one, and I will do all of them, and I'll come back to explain the next direction and the bar numbers. All right, so the same thing, what we'll have here we have this span to be this figure, and the same thing here, this is 4 meter 50. So what do? We'll do 4050 divided by 200, right? This divided by 200, which is the spacing. Okay, which is the spacing. We say equals to, that's 20 plus 1, we have 21. So in this direction we're going to have 21, all in this direction. This will be 21 because it's running from this span down to this span, to be 21. So this one is also running from this span down to this span, so this will also be 21. Okay, this will also be 21, and this is also 21. 21. Okay, we have 21, 21, and this direction, this will be 21. Okay, so what we're going to do here, we're going to copy this, showing the indication on how it could be read. I'm going to edit this text, saying this will be 21. Okay, for this span I'll be having 21, so I'm going to copy this. So if I do, if we do 3747, 3747 divided by 200, 100, we are having 18, 18 plus this. So this is a high number, that's 19 plus that, 20. So we'll be having 20 over here. Or better still, you can still say 19, okay? You can still say 19. Including this, if we add 19 plus 21, we'll have a total of 40. So in doing that, we're going to add this. You can see this is the last digit we have. We're going to divide this by 200. Forget we have 5, so we can add a total of 1 to it and we'll make it 6. So in this area, we'll be having 6. So you see, we'll be having 6 here, all right? So you can see, so the same thing we'll be doing the same thing by adding the span divided by the spacing, and whatever we have, we're going to add +1 to it as a factor of safety to get our number. The same thing we did here is what we'll be doing at this point. So I'll be doing this point and we'll get. So about this time, we have successfully label all this. Note, what I did here is the same approach I did in the horizontal direction. You try to get the span and it divided by what? By the spacing, all right? So just want to save time. So you can see that this is all I got for this vertical axis. You can see I try to label this area. I can see from this span down to this, I have 14, and from here down here, I have 12, right? So 12 in this direction, 12, and from here down to the last portion for this bottom, this top reinforcement, I have what? I have 22 and 20 and 12 in this area, right? So it's going to cut across, and here, because of this column, I left this area, all right? So judging towards this area, you can see that I also added the top runners for this direction, like I have in this direction that will be running for all the top. So the same thing I added in this direction, the one that will be running at this top and that will be running at this top, all right? So since we have someone that will be running at this top in this direction, we'll still have the same running in this other direction, all right? So we're going to have them in both vertical direction along the top bar. So you can see we successfully denote our top bar and our bottom bar and all the labels. These are basically for the numbers, you can see. So we've done this by adding all the numbers. We now have the total numbers of reinforcement here, that this reinforcement will be running 16 numbers, and is what the size is 12 mm. That's what we indicate here, y12. And the bar, now we're going to look at the bar. You can see all this bar we have 0, 1, 0, 2. Now coming to bar, like I explained in my staircase video, right? Denoting your bar number. Bar number, there are certain things you're supposed to understand when you're doing a bar number. These are 3 factors. Number 1 should be the size. Number 2 should be the length. And number 4 should be the shape. All right. Number is another thing that you should consider, but number shouldn't be much, considered, because when you have number, for example, you can see this could have the same shape, right? This could have the same shape, but at this level is running 3 and this is running 4. So you can also sum it up and indicate that it's the same numbers, right? You can also sum it up by saying this is 3 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. If you add everything up, you're going to have this. So all of them in this direction will have the same bar number, all right? But you should always consider the length, especially. Like for example, if I'm considering this to be, for example, we're starting from this, right? Let's call this bar 1, and that bar 1 is this number, okay? This is this reinforcement, okay? This is this reinforcement we are considering, okay? I think we've not joined it. Let's try to join this both reinforcement so they will appear as one, okay? So you can see. Now, when I have this bar, for example, you can see that this bar starts from this direction and run through this. Now, if I have this bar, I have 4406, adding the 100 and adding the 800 I have here. So suppose I have this bar to be 544. Let's add everything. Suppose I have this bar to be, let's say 5 meter. All right. If I'm going to add this, let's say, let me add it up. 4406. All right. Plus what I have there, plus 100 to be this length, plus this other length to be 800, right? Sorry, plus 800, okay? Plus what we have here. Let's get this measurement. I guess it should be less than 20. So you can see, okay, we have 112, right? In this area, 128, right? In this area, plus 128, plus 128. So if you sum it up, we're going to have 5.4 meters, right? So if I have 5.4, let's say that is the total length of this reinforcement, all right? So that is the total length of this reinforcement and it's running towards this span. Okay, so the question is, do I have every other reinforcement that have the same length as this? Which the answer is what? No, I don't have similar reinforcement in this slab, similar reinforcement in this slab as this. Because you can see this other reinforcement, the length is different from this other reinforcement. You can see, because this is running through this span. You can see where it terminates. You can see where this reinforcement terminates. So this length in this scenario is going to give us, they are going to be different bar number. They're going to have a different bar number. So that's what I'm trying to say. When you have the same length of a particular size reinforcement, if you have the same length, three criteria: if a particular reinforcement have the same length, the same shape and the same size, then in that situation, such reinforcement have to be what? The same bar number. But if they have different, if for any situation that one of these figure, maybe they have the same length, they have the same shape, but they don't have the same size, all right, then that should be called different bar, all right? There should be different bar specification, okay? Like case of in the case of this reinforcement here, you can see this. We have all of it at the same space. You can see I have 80, both 80. You can check when I was doing the top bar. I copied one of these to replace this, all right? I just use this same bar to replace this. So it means these three reinforcements are the same size, the same shape, and they are of the same length. So they are going to have the same bar number, all right? And including this and of this, they have the same shape. So when I'm detailing this, I'm going to consider this in my bar number. But aside this, every other reinforcement here has the same shape, has different shape and length, and they mix each of the figure. For them to have the same bar number, before I continue, they must have the same property of these three specifications: the same shape, the same length, and the same size. All right. So in this specification, in this regard, let's go on. So you can see this, it has different shape from everyone. So we'll call this one. So we'll look at this two. So move on to two. Move on to two. This is the second one. You can see we have different length. It's moving from here down to this area. So we'll call this 0 2. We're going to input 0 2. So we'll check on the next one. The next one is what? Look at it. It is this, right? Different length. So it's going to be different bar number. This will be 0 3, and so on and so forth. That's how we're going to name them. This will be 0 4. Unless you check, they have different. You can see this is running from this span down to this span, and this is running from here to here. So they have different length, right? So it's 4. The same thing here. Here we have a total number running to this direction. So we have different length. So because we have different length, what happens? We're going to have a different bar number, which is 5, right? So coming down here, we have a top bar. So the top bar here is bar 6. And don't forget, all the top bars at the mid span are the same regarding this drawing that we've just done. So in this regard, we are still going to add here to the what? Here is going to continue with bar 6. Okay? They're all going to bar 6. And this is different too. So this will be 7. sorry, bar 7. Okay, 7, and this is another different one, so we're going to call this bar 8. Okay, bar 8, and we'll move down here. This is another one at this region. So this has another length from here down to this spot is different from this length. So we're going to call it another different one. So it's going to be bar 9. This is bar 9. And judging from the last one, you're going to make sure you're tracing it very well. This is the bar running along this area. So this would be another different bar number, right? Let's go through to the basic. This will be bar 10. Okay, and we'll have the last. The last, this is it. So we'll have bar 11. Okay, so we'll do the same to this. This is going to be bar 12. This is going to be bar 12, right? And the next one, they have different. You can see this is running from here down to this span, while this extend down here. So they have different length, all right? Though they have the same size of the bar, they have the same shape, but they have different length. So currently now we're looking at length while talking about this. So this will be different length. This will be 13, right? So this is 13. And if you look at this is our top reinforcement. Will come that when we're talking about direction. So this will have 14. So this will be 14. And we'll go down to this same bar. This bar is the same thing as bar 6. All right. So they are all top bars. So this will be bar 6. So it's bar 06. And the next one is another top bar. We have what? Same 06. All right. The same approach. And now we've arrived at the last button to be bar 20. All right. So I just complete our bar mark. You can see they have here we have the top and the bottom, so we have a different bar number. We have 19. So that's what I just did over here. All right, so currently now we are going to go much on the direction. Right, you can see we have BB all through because I just copy all the text and the paste, and I'm going to edit them. All right, so edited all the numbers, and all the size of the bar are what are the same 12. You know, your decision, you can decide to run some like this top reinforcement that is as a top runner. You can still take it to be 10 mm. That would be good. 10 mm size reinforcement, depending on what you're doing. But for the purpose of this video, I want to keep it simple. I want to make it um 12 mm reinforcement. So what I'll be doing now, we're done with our rebars. You can see simply because we have this, so it is still the same. You can see here we have 60606 is because of this number, this bar and this bar. They have the same length, they have the same shape and the same size. That's why we got that. All right. So when you have your reinforcement, what you're going to do is the direction. Now one has to be at the bottom and one has to be at the top, right? Because we have a mat. When you're matting, one has to be on top and one has to be on the bottom. So in this regard, what we are going to do right here is, you can see this one now, which is the shorter span, will be our main, and this is going to be on top of it. All right, so this is going to be on top of it. So what we're going to do, we're going to tell one to be the main, that is to be the bottom, that is the top bottom, and the other to be the bottom. So in this regard, if we come down here, you can see that this is running along the longer span. So we're going to call this the bottom top. So this is going to be the bottom top, right? Why? Because we have this running along the shorter span. So this is running along the shorter span. So this, we are going to call this the bottom. So this is the bottom because this is the one you're going to lay first, and you now lay this on top, all right? So this is going to be on top of this one. So the one that's going to be on top is going to be the bottom top, all right? So the same thing goes to the top reinforcement. This is the top reinforcement, and this other one will be the bottom. So what we're going to do, we're going to tie this We're going to tie this before we're going to tie, when you have this return before you're going to have this. So we're going to put this shorter span before you're going to put the longer one. So in this regard, you're going to call this the top and this will be the bottom top. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So in this regard, we're going to call this the top. So what we're going to do is just to change the direction of each of them. So the same thing here I have here as the bottom top, and here I have this to be the bottom. In this area I'm going to have this as the bottom top also. So I'm going to have this as the bottom top also. This will going to be the top. Why? Because it's running on top of it. You can see this is going to be our top. You can see, because it's going to run on top of this rebar, right? It's going to run on top of this. So we're calling it the top. The same thing here, we'll have the top for this. So basically what you're doing is the one that's going to be at the bottom, you call it the bottom top, the bottom. The one that's going to be up. So you're doing it for both direction. Okay. So that is what you're just going to do basically. So now we are done with everything, you can see, from the direction. So what I did typically is the same thing I just done by placing the directions. The one that will be at the top always be at the top, the one that will be at the bottom always be at the bottom. I've done it here, and I did the same thing over here. All right. So in this direction, we have double reinforced here because of the shorter span, right? Because of the shorter distance, and this is our cantilever. We are receiving the landing. Since we are done, let's take this off. Okay, let's take this off because these are part of the design procedure. So take them off. So this is ready. So if you look at this is running at the top area, so it's going to be on top of this. All right. So this will be running underneath, in as much as we have the one at the shorter span under it and the one at the longer span being on top. So that's what we just did. A typical example of this is this. This is a typical example of it. Let's take rid of the calculator so I have enough space. So you can see this where you have your bars, you have your rebars. Your rebars here, you can see this is where we have the top bar, you can see, and where we have the bottom bar. And these are all matte, alright? These are all matte. So you can see that we have one on top. You can see the returning. So you can see we have this layer on the blue, and we have this layer on the blue up, right? So by the time we lay this on the shorter span here, on the top, it's going to come back and it's going to be at the top layer. So the same thing we have here on the white, we're going to have this. So you're going to call this blue the bottom, right? This blue is going to be the bottom. Why this blue will be the bottom top? Because this white label, this white reinforcement here, this one is the reinforcement on top of this. Then at the upper region, this is the top region. So we're going to have this as the top bottom, right? This is the top bottom, and this is the top. This is what we have, the top, okay? And this is the top bottom, whereas we have the bottom top and the bottom. So don't get confused. So you have to identify this direction on site so that by the time you're labeling, you're calling out your bars, it should be identified on site. Somebody should be able to know that this is your bottom, that this is to be laid first. So this always guides, the direction guides on the reinforcement, the iron guides, while they are bending. They know the first rebar to lay, the first reinforcement that will come next, alright? After putting the blue, you put all this, alright? Then when you return, you're going to create this, and you return and you're going to tie. So in this, it's going to guide you on site while you're doing your sectioning, alright? This is termination, and you consider extension, alright? Extension of 30, exceeding the beam line, right? And in this other side, you can see that there is an extension. So by the time you have your 30 over here and 30 over here, including the beam depth, right? The beam width, okay? So you don't have to worry about your lap length over when you have a beam section. But if you have, so you can see over here where I have, this is a typical foundation slab design, right? I just want to show you this. You can see where you have a longer span. You can see this longer span. So you can see here, this is already made design I've already made for one of my clients, So what I'm trying to say to an SS is this. You can look at this, you can see where I have a wider span. You can see the wider span from, from this area. I don't have a beam crossing it. I only have a trench along this area and a trench along this area. So because of this wide range, what do I have to do? I have to cut it, and in this area, you have to consider your lap length over here. But when you have a beam like this, it's also wise for you to cut it across. This is what I'm trying to say. Alright? So that is why it's always effective for you to cut your section and cut your rebar like this. Alright? In detailing, you should always, this is a way by which you are going to detail an efficient slab, a good slab with this doing. So if you like what you're seeing, I want you to share, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Please subscribe. And we also do mentorship on slab editing, designs of all kinds of structure, all kinds of editing. If you are interested, please, I want you to comment or follow up my link. And I also give a template, a proper template for a little token. You need a template like this that you're going to use in order to practice and get an efficient way of how you can detail an efficient slab. Alright? So thanks and bye for now.